Hello, I'm Nazas Afroz. I'm the translator of this book, Deshe Videshe, written by Sir Mustafa Ali and was first published in 1949. This is regarded as one of the iconic books of Bangla literature that for over 70 years, discerning Bangla readers have been reading it. My translation was published by Speaking Tiger under the title In a Land Far From Home, a Bengali in Afghanistan in 2015. Sir Mustafa Ali was a direct student of Rabindranath Tagore, and he was the first batch graduate of Vishwabharati when Rabindranath founded the university in 1923. After finishing his graduation, Mustafa Ali went to Kabul after taking up a teaching job. That was the most exciting time of Afghanistan when the modernist king, the reformist king Amanullah, was trying to reform Afghanistan, trying to modernize Afghanistan by opening up schools and colleges for girls and boys, and Mustafa Ali was right in the middle of that project. He lived there for about a year and a half, and this is his memoir of his time in Kabul. Mustafa Ali was a polyglot. He knew more than a dozen languages, so in his texts there are constant references of different languages and different cultures, which makes his prose most unique. These days, when we are all homebound, let me introduce this book to you. And I will read little bits from two sections of this book. The first one is when he is introducing his companion and his servant, his cook, Abdur Rahman. Looking at the dinner table, I had no doubt that my servant Abdur Rahman had indeed been in charge of the army mess. A kilo of lamb korma was swimming in a thick gravy of onion and ghee. Not in a small bowl, but in a big dish. A few nuts and raisins were playing hide and seek here and there, while one outcast potato was trying to kill itself by drowning in one corner. There were 8 jumbo-sized shami kebabs on a plate. A big serving dish was full of pulao with a roasted chicken sitting on top. Seeing me speechless, Abdur Rahman hurriedly said, "I have more in the kitchen." The cooking was excellent and I was hungry too. So I ate much more than an average Bengali normally would. That was the opening night and Abdur Rahman was checking out my ability to eat like the way a student of medicine concentrates on his first cadaver dissection. I'll now go to the section where Mustafa Ali is introducing the bazaars of Kabul. The second attraction of Kabul was its bazaars. Kabul's bazaar was poorer than that of Peshawar, but far more colorful. People of at least 25 nationalities did their trading there, keeping their sartorial and linguistic distinctions. Hazara, Uzbek, Kafiristanis, Kizilbash, Mongol, Kurd. The traders of Kabul could easily tell who was from where, their businesses, methods of trading, whether spendthrift or generous, from their dress, hat, pustin, and riding boots. It was like a dream folk theatre. The original Kabulis were trying to buy and sell loudly, taking the names of God and all the prophets. The foreigners were trying to bargain, their merchandise strapped on the back of donkeys and mules. The elderly trader of Bukhara would enter the shop with a slow gait, as if he wanted to have all his meals and spend the night there. His servants were following him, carrying his tobacco and hookah. He too would have a mule load of carpets. You would try to leave, but the shopkeeper would not let you go. They might be doing good business with substantial profits, and since you did not have much work, you could also share a meal with them. Many young boys loitered on the streets. The elderly trader would tell one of them, "Bacha, lad, ask the tea seller to send over some more tea." They would then unfold the carpets. So many colors, so many intricate patterns, so soft to touch. Apparently, the study of carpets was a big subject. There was no end to it. At least 30 kinds of carpets were sold in Kabul. There were various subgroups and distinct patterns among them. They would be classified based on their places of origin, colors and patterns. Some patterns were woven with special wool. You would not find anything cheap there. It contained life and was full of happiness. There was a big inn at the end of the bazaar. At the end of the day's work and after the evening prayer, the traders would gather there to revitalize themselves. The Mongols would start dancing in a circle on the terrace with their rifles on their shoulders, wearing heavy riding boots and tossing their long hair. Mongol songs from across the Amu Darya would reverberate around the hills of Kabul in tandem with clapping and the thumping of boots. As you took in the scene, you would notice that one Iranian, disregarding all the noise, was sitting in the corner with his sitar next to his ear, singing verses from Hafiz. A few listeners would gather around him with their eyes closed, as if intoxicated with the images of roses and bulbul and the long-separated lover. A poetry session was in progress in the room of the Pustin trader. A clean-shaven young poet with the hint of a moustache and coal in his eyes sat with his legs folded in front of a candle, reading poetry from parchment. Others were repeating each verse and expressing their appreciation by saying, Marhabba Afareen, well done, superb. And the main gathering was around the Tajiks of Kohistan. They were singing loudly in unison, breaking the walls and the stones, creating ripples in the air. Aye Fatu Janema, Fatu Jan, Bar tu Shom Kurban. The long drawn out Kurban was to keep up with the beat. It was no classical music, but their singing came from their hearts. O my Fatu Jan, my love, for your sake I shall die. In reply, Fatu Jan was saying skeptically, Chera rafti hich na gufti dur Hindustan, meaning, why then did you leave me for far Hindustan? When the answer to this question would not be found in the greatest of love songs and poetries of the world of all ages, then you would be quite stupid to expect it from the young illiterate Tajik poet. Radha had the same question for Krishna when he left Braja to conquer Mathura. Even Krishna, the creator of Gita that answered all human dilemmas, had no answer. The lover of Balkh was silent too. Syed Mustafa Ali lived until 1929 when he was caught in a rebellion against the king, which was orchestrated by the ultra-orthodox mullahs of the country and led by few tribes of Afghanistan. Mustafa Ali nearly died there, starving. In these strange times of COVID-19 infection, we know that a lot of people inside our own country, they are scattered and they are stuck, and some of them are also on the verges of starvation. So let's stay safe and think about these people and try to help the citizens' initiatives that have been around to help these people. Goodbye.